Every major news network right now is telling you that the biggest threat to your financial future is a recession, tariffs, inflation, maybe a stock market correction. I want you to stop and think about something. What if the real threat is not that your money loses value, but that your money stops being yours? Not in some abstract philosophical sense, I mean structurally, mechanically. What if, while you have been watching the markets go up and down, the architecture of your entire financial life has been quietly redesigned, and the new architecture has a feature the old one never had, a third lock on every transaction you will ever make? I am going to show you exactly what I mean, because what is happening right now in Washington, in Basel, and inside the Depository Trust and Clearing Corporation is not a financial reform. That is the language they are using. What it actually is, if you follow the structural logic, is a transfer of fiscal sovereignty from elected representatives to unelected financial infrastructure. And I am going to prove it. Here's my thesis, and I'm going to lay it out plainly, because on this channel, we do not do panic, and we do not do cheerleading. We follow the logic of power, we follow the incentives, and when you strip away the emotion and the headlines, the picture always becomes clear. Today, I'm going to show you exactly 3 things. First, that the legislation moving through Congress right now, the Genius Act and the Clarity Act, is not about regulating cryptocurrency. It is about building the legal scaffolding for programmable money. And second, that the DTCC, the institution that custodies over $114 trillion in securities, has already begun live production trades using tokenized stocks, bonds, and treasuries. And most people do not even know it is happening. Third, that the data center build-out required to run this system is so enormous that it tells you something about the intended scale that no official will say out loud. Let me start with the facts, because you need the ground beneath your feet before I take you into the analysis. On July 18th, 2025, the Genius Act was signed into law. That is the Guiding and Establishing National Innovation for U.S. Stablecoins Act. It creates a comprehensive federal regulatory framework for payment stablecoins, digital tokens pegged one-to-one to the US dollar or to equivalent liquid assets like treasury bills. Issuers above $10 billion in circulation must register under federal oversight. The Office of the Comptroller of the Currency is already issuing proposed rulemaking as of February 2026. This is not a proposal, this is law. Running alongside it is the Clarity Act, the Digital Asset Market Clarity Act. It passed the House in July 2025. The Senate Banking Committee approved it in May 2026 by a vote of 15-9. As of right now, it sits on the Senate calendar with no floor vote scheduled. 3 weeks before the August 10th recess, this bill does something that sounds technical, but is profoundly consequential. It creates a legal classification system that determines whether a digital token is a security or a commodity. And it establishes registration paths for exchanges, brokers, dealers, and token issuers. Coinbase alone spent $56 million through a super PAC to help elect a Congress capable of passing exactly this legislation. Now here's a part the headlines skip. Most coverage frames these bills as crypto regulation. That reading is not just shallow, it is dangerously wrong. I want you to hold a concept in your mind. I'm going to call it the 3-lock architecture. Right now, when you buy something, there are 2 parties to the transaction, you and the seller. You have a lock, the seller has a lock. If either of you says no, the transaction does not happen. Financial institutions can intervene under anti-money laundering rules or know your customer requirements, but structurally the system is bilateral, 2 locks. Programmable money introduces a 3rd lock. Between you and the seller, there is now an algorithm, a set of encoded rules that can approve, deny, modify, delay, or conditionally permit every single transaction. That is not a conspiracy theory. That is the literal technical definition of programmable money. The Bank for International Settlements itself describes the architecture this way. In their own words, tokenization integrates messaging, reconciliation, and settlement into a single seamless operation. What they do not say, but what the architecture necessarily implies, is that the entity controlling the program controls the transaction. That is not a financial system. That is a control system. Now, let me take you deeper, because this is where it gets genuinely alarming. On July 15th, 2026, less than 3 weeks ago, the DTCC processed live trades involving tokenized stocks, ETFs, and US Treasuries. This was not a simulation. This was not a white paper. This was production trading on a distributed ledger involving the backbone institution of American capital markets. The pilot demonstrated how tokenized securities can support collateral, repo, and equity transactions while preserving the same legal ownership rights as traditional assets. Their full service launch is set for October 2026. I want you to memorize two numbers. $114 trillion. That is how much the DTCC currently custodies. And 50, that is the number of major financial institutions that have joined the DTCC industry working group to build out this tokenization service. These are not crypto startups. These are custodians, asset managers, brokers, and trading venues. Think about what that means. The institution that handles the behind-the-scenes work of ensuring every securities transaction America has completed properly is now moving those transactions onto a programmable distributed ledger. The SEC gave them a no-action letter in December 2025, authorizing a 3-year pilot. The initial scope covers Russell 1000 stocks, the 1,000 largest publicly traded U.S. companies, ETFs tracking major indices, and U.S. Treasury bills, bonds, and notes. Does that sound like crypto regulation, or does it sound like the tokenization of the entire American financial system? Here is what almost nobody knows. While the DTCC was running its July pilot, something even larger was happening at the international level. On July 30th, 2026, 4 days ago, the Bank for International Settlements completed its Project Agora pilot. 28 of the world's largest banks, including JP Morgan, Citi, UBS, and Lloyds, settled 30 real cross-border transactions worth approximately $1 million through a shared platform using tokenized central bank reserves and tokenized commercial bank deposits. The average settlement time was 80 seconds across 6 currencies. Let that sit. The BIS is not talking about building the system. They just tested it with real money with real banks. And the next phase extends into the 4th quarter of 2026, with definitive technical specifications expected in the 1st quarter of 2027. Now connect these dots. The Genius Act provides the legal framework for stablecoins. The Clarity Act provides the classification system for digital tokens. The DTCC provides the domestic infrastructure for tokenizing American securities. And the BIS provides the international settlement layer connecting it all. Each piece in isolation looks like a reasonable financial modernization. Together, they are the architecture of a new monetary operating system. And the defining feature of that operating system, the feature that separates it from everything that came before, is programmability. Now, before I continue, I want to present the strongest possible argument for the opposing side because I owe you the real debate, not a simplified version. The Steelman case goes like this. Tokenization reduces settlement times. It cuts costs. It increases transparency. Cross-border payments currently take days and cost billions in intermediary fees. The existing system is slow, expensive, and opaque. Programmable settlement using smart contracts eliminates manual reconciliation, reduces counterparty risk, and opens markets to broader participation. The IMF itself published a paper in April 2026 describing tokenization as a structural improvement in financial architecture. BlackRock's tokenized fund, BIDL, has crossed $2.9 billion. The total on-chain value of tokenized real-world assets reached $32 billion by June 2026, nearly triple the figure from a year earlier. This is not a fringe movement. This is institutional capital flowing in for operational reasons. And I will be honest, the efficiency argument is real. The current system is genuinely inefficient. The Steelman describes the first 18 months accurately. But the Steelman cannot explain the data centers. Here is the question nobody in the efficiency camp has answered. If this is about faster settlement and lower costs, why does the physical infrastructure being built look like it is designed to monitor and control every financial transaction on the planet? Global data center electricity consumption is projected to reach 565 terawatt hours in 2026, up 26% from the year before. Goldman Sachs projects U.S. data center power demand will climb from 31 gigawatts in 2025 to 66 gigawatts by 2027. That is more than doubling in 2 years. The US Department of Energy found that data centers consume 4.4% of all US electricity in 2023, and projects that figure could hit 12% by 2028. Over 4,500 active data center facilities are operating in the United States today, with more than 700 under construction across 38 states. In Virginia alone, data centers consume more than a quarter of the state's electricity. You do not build that much compute capacity for faster stock settlement. You build that much compute capacity when you intend to process, monitor, and enforce rules on every transaction in a programmable financial system. And the question I keep asking, and I have no way of knowing the answer, is whether the US data center build-out is designed for domestic programmable finance or for global programmable finance. Because if you're pushing stablecoins and digital tokens out to the entire world through the dollar system, the compute requirements are orders of magnitude larger. Now, here is where the structural picture gets even more important, and I want you to pay close attention, because this is the part that connects your personal financial security to the geopolitical architecture. There are 3 pillars required to execute a programmable control grid. The first is programmable money, and that is what the Genius Act, the Clarity Act, and the DTCC tokenization service provide. The second is digital identity, a persistent digital identifier linked to your transactions, your assets, and your compliance status. The third is the physical surveillance and hardware layer, the data centers, the cameras, the connected infrastructure. All 3 are being built simultaneously. And the countries that went furthest down this road first are now pulling back. Sweden abandoned its plans for an all-digital e-krona in 2023. Sweden's defense ministry now distributes brochures advising households to keep at least a week's supply of banknotes on hand, citing the vulnerability of electronic banking to cyber warfare. Sweden's central bank governor stated publicly that people should always be able to pay for food, healthcare, and medicine with cash. Switzerland is moving toward enshrining cash in its constitution. That is not a group of countries that tried digital money and found it convenient. That is a group of countries that tried digital money and realized what it actually is. Here are my 3 predictions. Write these down, come back in 60 days, and tell me whether I was right or wrong. Prediction number 1, the Clarity Act will not pass the full Senate before the August 10th recess. The 3 disputes blocking democratic votes, ethics provisions, DeFi treatment, and CFTC jurisdictional boundaries will not be resolved in 3 weeks. However, it will pass during the post-election lame duck session between November and December 2026. The political incentives are too aligned and the lobbying money too large for it to die. When it passes, the legal scaffolding for programmable money will be complete. Prediction number 2. By the end of the first quarter of 2027, the DTCC's tokenization service will have expanded beyond the initial Russell 1000 scope. Watch for announcements covering municipal bonds, corporate debt, and mortgage-backed securities. The moment those asset classes are tokenized, the programmability of the system extends from public equities into the debt that underlies American household wealth. That is the threshold that matters. Prediction number 3. Watch what the Federal Reserve does not say about programmable money. The Fed will not publicly endorse a central bank digital currency. They will not need to. The private sector tokenization infrastructure being built by the DTCC, the stablecoin framework established by the Genius Act, and the bias settlement layer built through Project Aurora will accomplish the same functional outcome without requiring the political toxicity of the term CBDC. Watch for what they do not say. That silence is a signal. Here are 3 things I want you to watch in the next 90 days. First, watch the Senate calendar around the Clarity Act. Every delay between now and August 10th increases the probability of a lame duck passage, which means less public scrutiny and less debate. The scheduling decisions of the Senate Majority Leader in the next 2 weeks are the single most concrete signal of timing. Second, watch the DTCC's October full service launch. The July pilot was limited production. October is operational readiness. Pay attention to which blockchain networks are authorized and which financial institutions opt in during the first 30 days. The adoption curve in those first 30 days will tell you how fast the rest of the system follows. Third, and this one is personal, watch your own transaction patterns. Every time you use a digital payment, You are generating data that feeds the system being built around you. Cash is not a relic. Cash is the only payment technology that does not require permission from a third party to function. And if you want the 47 specific strategies for hedging your wealth, cutting your inflation exposure, and reading the 5 signals that tell you the truth before any headline does, I put everything into the crisis preparation blueprint. It is the personal finance chapter that the geopolitical analysis never includes. The link is in the description and the pinned comment. Most households recover the cost in the first week. Here's a question I want to leave you with. Every monetary system in history has been a social contract. The currency works because we collectively agree it works. Gold worked because we agreed. Paper works because we agree. Digital ledgers work because we agree. But every previous form of money had one thing in common. Once it was in your hands, it was yours. You decided when to spend it, where to spend it, and on what. Programmable money breaks that contract. It is still called money. It still looks like money. But it has a feature that no money in human history has ever had. The ability for someone other than you to decide whether your transaction is permitted. The question is not whether this system is being built. It is being built. The question is not whether the technology works. It works. The BIS just proved it works across 6 currencies in 80 seconds. The question is the one that every civilization eventually faces. Who holds the key to the third lock? The most dangerous financial system is not the one that crashes. It is the one that works perfectly for whoever controls it. I am Professor Jiang Xueqin. Thank you for watching. If this analysis helps you understand what is actually happening beneath the surface, subscribe. This story is going to move fast, and I will be tracking every turn. Tell me in the comments which of the 3 pillars concerns you most: the programmable money, the digital identity, or the physical infrastructure. I read your responses, and your questions shape the next analysis.